North Korea is known for being one of the most isolated and secretive countries in the world. Entering the country is only possible through heavily supervised state-approved routes. Real images of many areas are extremely limited on services like Google Maps, and on top of that, the overwhelming majority of citizens don't even have access to the internet as we understand it. Instead, there is something called Hwamyeong, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, a kind of closed national intranet that only operates with government-approved content. Almost everything in North Korea is subjected to some degree of surveillance and state control. Education, media, music, films, foreign information, and even how people spend their free time. If something isn't authorized by the state, it is simply forbidden. And when I say forbidden, I don't mean forbidden in the Western sense, where something may technically be illegal, but rarely carries serious consequences for the average person. I'm not talking about pirating a movie or downloading a game illegally, and in practice, nothing really happens. In North Korea, forbidden often means something much more literal. Now, many reports about North Korea should always be approached with caution because reliable information is extremely limited. However, there does seem to be a fairly strong consensus among defectors, human rights organizations, and international analysts regarding one thing: consuming foreign entertainment can carry very serious consequences. And this raises a question that most people have probably never thought about. If foreign entertainment is so heavily restricted, what happens with video games? Because when you think about it, video games may be one of the most influential forms of entertainment ever created. We spend hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours inside them. They expose us to different words, different cultures, different ways of thinking. They can even shape how we perceive certain values. So, do North Koreans actually play video games? Is there really a gaming culture inside one of the most closed countries on Earth? The surprising answer is yes. Video games do exist in North Korea, and in fact, they're somewhat more common than you'd probably expect. However, the entire system surrounding them has almost nothing in common with what we know in Europe, America, or even neighboring South Korea. We're not talking about an open ecosystem where anyone downloads Steam, buys a console, or plays online with strangers. We're talking about something far stranger. A gaming culture limited by economic access, social status, state surveillance, and political ideology. And the more I researched this topic, the more it started to feel like even something as seemingly innocent as playing games can become a political issue there. Before asking what North Koreans play, maybe we should start with a more basic question. Who can actually afford to play? Because we tend to assume video games are universal, especially from our perspective. We think about cheap phones, old computers, or second-hand consoles, and it feels obvious that almost any teenager could end up playing something. But North Korea works differently. Historically, the country has maintained an informal system known as sonbun, a social classification system based largely on a citizen's family and political background. Although experts still debate how influential the system remains today, for decades it has affected access to opportunities, education, employment, and privileges. Video games appear to be considerably more common among urban upper and upper middle classes, which means not every family has the same access to technology. Households with personal computers are far from universal, and certain electronic devices are much more common among privileged groups or urban residents, especially in places like Pyongyang and other major cities. Because in generally rural areas, the possibility of regularly playing video games may become extremely limited. In other words, access to digital entertainment is not distributed equally across the population. Political elites, certain government officials, families with higher social status, and urban residents are simply more likely to own devices capable of gaming. And that already creates a huge difference compared to many other countries. Because while gaming is often associated with mass entertainment elsewhere, there it can partially become a privilege. And now we finally get to the main question. What video games are actually permitted? North Korea doesn't just allow certain video games, it has also developed some of its own. There are technology companies linked to the country that have produced educational software, simple games, and digital applications for years. Part of this content appears to be aimed at children or learning purposes. Many officially approved games have relatively harmless functions. Math games, puzzle games, language learning software, educational games for children, chess, card games, and some interactive learning programs. So far, this could sound similar to almost any educational ecosystem. However, as you'd probably expect from a country like North Korea, certain video games or interactive content include very strong patriotic elements, positive portrayals of the military, national narratives, ideological messaging, content where the identity of the country is constantly reinforced. And this is interesting because video games are not only entertainment. Video games can also teach and reinforce the ideological messages of a regime. game. After all, a child who spends hundreds of hours interacting with a particular narrative may internalize certain ideas without even realizing. And that happens everywhere in the world. The difference lies in how much the state controls what people consume. On top of that, most games officially sold in North Korea are actually foreign games that have been translated, modified, and repackaged by authorized studios. Titles such as Farmville, Candy Crush, or Angry Birds have reportedly been adapted to appear more local. Likewise, Need for Speed was reportedly rebranded as Race of the Thousand League Cars and presented as a new production by Pyongyang Computer, accompanied by messaging about our strength, our technology, and our resources. In other words, digital entertainment exists, gaming exists, but only within very specific limits where the presence of the state is always there in the background. Despite the state control, North Korea isn't completely isolated. Its largest ally and one of its main economic partners is China. Since the early 2000s, foreign films, TV series, music, and digital content have reportedly entered the country through the Chinese border using USB drives, hard drives, and SD cards. One North Korean defector claimed to have played a huge amount of GTA 5, FIFA, and Project IGI2, while also saying that if even one USB containing a game arrived in a town, eventually all the kids would end up playing it. Surprisingly, DotA 2 had apparently become popular among university students and younger people. Because international internet access is so limited, some players reportedly organized multiplayer matches using LAN cables between computers owned by neighbors or friends. But we also shouldn't imagine that simply having illegal access to these games suddenly means people can log online and queue ranked matches in League of Legends. Not even close. At best, most games would only be playable offline, meaning that in something like Counter-Strike, players might end up fighting all the bots, which is admittedly a little depressing when you think about it, but I guess something is better than nothing, right? But what happens if the government discovers you are playing illegal games? Are people actually punished for consuming foreign entertainment? The answer appears to be yes, although the exact severity varies heavily depending on the case and verifying information inside North Korea remains extremely difficult. It's not necessarily as simple as if you are caught playing Animal Crossing, you will be publicly executed by guillotine and your entire family will be sent to forced labor camps. What does seem relatively documented is the existence of severe punishments linked to distributing or consuming foreign media. Reported punishments can include watching, storing, or consuming prohibited foreign content, which can lead to confiscation of property, expulsion from school or work, detention, forced labor, or re-education. General foreign media, reportedly punishable by up to 10 years of correctional labor. South Korean content or media from countries considered hostile, penalties appear significantly harsher, potentially reaching life imprisonment with labor or even the death penalty in distribution-related cases. Selling or distributing USB drives or memory cards containing foreign content, considerably more dangerous than simply consuming it. Reported punishments range from years in re-education camps to public execution. The logic behind this seems fairly clear. The issue may not simply be a foreign zone or a foreign video game because it's foreign. The concern lies in the influence it might have on citizens, and in its ability to encourage critical thinking or simply ideas different from those promoted by the regime. Because as we all know, every cultural product transmits values. A TV series transmits lifestyles, a film transmits ideas, a video game does too. And for extremely closed systems, controlling information often means controlling part of how the population thinks. The reality is that North Korea is not the only country that uses video games as another tool to spread its propagandistic ideals. Other countries, such as the United States, also do it in their own way. In this case with America's Army, a game conceived to bring young Americans closer to the military environment through a relatively positive and professional representation of the army. But unlike other countries, in North Korea absolutely everything is propagandistic. If it's not, or if it goes against the regime, forget about it. Besides, video games are a form of entertainment in which the user becomes enormously involved and experiences things intensely. So for example, if you are playing a war shooter where you are Kim Jong-un and your mission is to kill evil capitalist Americans and South Koreans under a lore of overcoming hardship, territorial expansion, and hatred justified through violence, the message will probably slowly sink into you. At the end of the day, choices like who is the good guy and who is the bad guy, who is the victim, who appears as the savior, are all in the hands of the developer, and he can manipulate the reality of the game however he wants. When researching all of this, it is impossible for me, from my Western point of view, not to think about why the North Korean government represses so much any kind of influence that could weaken the ideology of the regime, no matter how banal it may be. In reality, the vast majority of games do not affect someone's ideological thinking at all. They only serve to entertain, and even then, they do not allow these kinds of games in this country because in this society, they see it as a waste of time. if it is not something that teaches you practical knowledge or values worthy of the regime. I am one of those who think that it is necessary to have some empty entertainment time once in a while in order to recharge your batteries and be more productive later when you have to concentrate again, because isn't it impossible to be productive 24 hours a day? And not even speaking about productivity anymore, who doesn't want to entertain themselves for a while without thinking about anything related to work, studying, or the ideas of the regime? It is impossible not to become saturated with this. Anyway, I would not like to end the video without leaving you with a phrase to reflect on the topic discussed on this video. And on this occasion, I would like to show you this quote by George Orwell, which goes, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." Thank you guys, and see you next video.